Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Commissioner George Teal, and I'd like to welcome you to this live town hall. Since 2020, we've hosted dozens of these events, and we're always look forward to connecting with our community. We want you to know we heard you say you had more questions about home rule. That's why we are here tonight. Commissioner Layton.
Great. Thank you so much. And welcome to everybody for joining us for our part two of the home rule discussion, where we're going to be providing clean, transparent, open communications and answering all of your questions about home rule. Of course, we can't be near the ballot box at the Miller Building, so we're virtual tonight. Want to avoid the electioneering and make sure that it's a clean process. But this also gives everyone an opportunity. We had about 9,000 people online at the last meeting, in addition to the hundreds that were in the room. So again, welcome to everybody. Want to begin by just being clear about home rule. Tonight is about clarifying what home rule is and what it is not. It's mostly about answering your questions. One of the biggest questions that came up was, what does home rule actually do? And want to be very clear that according to Title 32 CRS, there are a number of very specific things that home rule allows, including affecting local control around issues like immigration, public health, public safety, and homelessness, all issues that are critically important to you, not to mention property taxes, which again, under Title 32, home rule counties are permitted to create local tax limits, certainly beyond what we're normally allowed to do. So excited to continue the conversation tonight and hear from folks that have some questions for us. Back to you, Roger.
All right, thank you, commissioners. We want to hear from your questions tonight. So to ask a question on the phone, press *3 on your telephone keypad. You'll be transferred to an operator who will take down some basic information and get you in the queue. Once the operator notes your information, you'll be returned to the call and can listen to the conversation until it's your turn. When it's your turn, I will call your name and ask you to repeat your question for our live audience. To ask a question online, enter it into the dialog box, and I will read it aloud when that time comes. Since we want to hear from as many of you as possible, we'll limit all speakers to just one question. And we also want to be very clear about our expectations for the format tonight. We know voters still have lots of questions they want answered before they cast their ballot. So with that in mind, that's what we're doing here tonight. This is not a time to advocate for or against a position or a candidate for the, we want to just answer questions as quickly and as honestly and as openly as we possibly can. So with that said, I may cut you off if people get off track. Hopefully we'll be able to stay on message and stay on with our goal tonight of answering questions and not advocating. So now I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Teal to get us started. Commissioner, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Roger. We want to start very briefly tonight with our attorney, Jeff Garcia, who will provide a quick status update. Jeff, home rule is a process. Can you tell us where in this process we are now? And Jeff, you might have to unmute there.
I apologize. Thank you so much, Commissioner, and thanks for everyone joining us tonight. Home rule is a method and a means for counties to gain greater local control, which is provided by the state constitution. It provides that greater local control by statutory and common law powers that address specific issues that relate to state interests. And on June 24th, the election will ask the question, does the county want to create a home rule charter, who those members are, and allow them to start drafting that charter for the county?
All right, very good. So a couple reminders again, *3 on your telephone keypad. If you'd like to get in the queue, we have Kathy and Jennifer standing by. They'll take down some basic information and get you in the queue. We're going to start with some of our online questions that have been rolling in. The first one is from Kelly. Why are we doing this so fast? We'd like to talk about the timeline for this.
So I'll go ahead and jump in on that one. Kelly, we're doing this as fast as the law provides. There's a very strict timeline, if you will, in the home rule provisions under Article 14, but also under Section 30 of Colorado Revised Statutes. So we're going no faster than the law allows us to. Jeff, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Commissioner, there are a number of deadlines that take effect with creating a home rule charter, and the county is following those deadlines. They're statutory in nature, and we're trying to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in this, but also do it in a way that's efficient and cost effective for the county.
Yeah, and I'll briefly add too, this isn't all that fast. Keep in mind that June 24th is only the opportunity for citizens to vote on whether a study should be done around the charter of Douglas County. It is not a vote on the actual charter itself. If successful in June, that would move forward into November. So this group, in addition to all of the work that the county's doing, has had north of 32 public meetings on this issue, trying to objectively explain exactly what home rule does and does not, including this meeting. So keep in mind that this would not come to an official vote until November. And in the interim, there would be a number of ongoing public engagements throughout the year for folks to ring in on what should and should not be in the charter.
So that's a good lead into our next question that came in from Becky. And she asked, what exactly are the next steps if forming a charter commission passes?
Jeff, why don't you take us into that one? Because those are legally prescribed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner. So if the Charter Commission is formed and the question is said that we do want to move forward with this, that first meeting will occur where the 21 new members will get together. They'll elect officers. They'll adopt rules. They'll set a schedule. And then thereafter, their meetings will be open to the public. All their documents will be open to public review under Cora. And there will be 3 statutory meetings that come up for public comment and the public to engage directly with them. And during that time, they'll be drafting a charter. And at some point, they'll get to a point where they feel that there is a charter that they would like the public to see that would be printed in the newspapers as well as in our website. And the second election would occur when they've put that charter, that final draft charter, forward to the Board of County Commissioners to call for a second election.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm told there are detailed steps on the county's website about this process. So if you'd like more information on what Jeff just kind of covered, check out our website for that information. Let's go to the phones and hear from Michael next. Michael, go ahead.
Yes, sir. The question I had is, I understand that it will have the effect to affect property taxes. And with the repeal of Gallagher, we saw, property taxes skyrocket. But the real question I have is, does it have the ability to adjust to affect the root problem, which is PARA, which is a $33 billion liability, pension liability the taxpayers have? And, what ability will it have with either charter schools or voucher systems so we can actually address the root problem of this $33 billion liability that taxpayers have for retired teachers?
I'm really thankful that we've got our county assessor online, but I want to start by just saying and being really clear and upfront that home rule does not make Douglas County an absolute authority over state law. The power granted under home rule would not be absolute, and there still would be a number of challenges associated with state law that could be really difficult for citizens. What home rule does do under Title 30, CRS 3035-201, is it does permit home rule counties the authority to create local tax limits, and then, of course, exempt the county from state taxes that solely fund the county. So taxes that are local and related to county functioning, we would have greater control over. But challenging issues at the state could still remain. Toby?
Yeah, and I agree. Creating a home rule charter would not have the ability to address financial issues inside of education funding for the state of Colorado. either at the local school district or any other school district. It is really about taxation, revenue, spending with respect to financial matters for Douglas County government only. Which just to finish that, what can be addressed specifically are things like mill levies, type of debt that we're allowed to do, and spending limitations. But none of those would apply to the Douglas County School District.
When it comes to taxes, one thing that the treasurer and I have been talking about for years is the fact that Douglas County de-Bruced back in the 90s. And so a lot of people think that Douglas County is still under Tabor, still under the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. But that's just not so. One of the things we can do under Home Rule, and it's up to the Charter Commission once they're selected and they sit, is we can reinstitute the Taxpayer Bill of Rights in our charter. Literally a copy and paste of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights into the Douglas County Charter. It's something the treasurer and I have been talking about for years. And quite frankly, I think it's a very good topic for us to host as a discussion in the county once the Home Rule Charter Commission is sat.
I'd like to add to that. When the county decided to de-Bruce, it was basically under a false assertion that we had taken money from developers to take care of the impacts of their development, and that if we did not de-Bruce, that money would have to be returned to the developers and we would still have the impacts, but not the ability to deal with them. I think that was probably an exaggeration and false, but it was under those conditions that the voters did vote to de-Bruce. And I agree with Commissioner Teal that it's time for us to get the protection of Tabor back.
All right. A reminder, star 3 on your telephone keypad if you'd like to get the queue to ask a question. We're going to hear from Blaine next. Go ahead.
Yes. I had a question in more legality about what did Polis sign on 527 that states that all bills apply to home rules now? Is that legal? Or what did he actually sign legality-wise for home rule, against home rules on 527?
Can I jump in on this, Commissioner?
Please do, Jeff.
I'm not familiar with what was signed on that date. I would be happy to look into that and maybe put something on our home rule information page. But I don't know of any law that limits or takes away the power of home rule. Home rule exists as a constitutional power, and every year there are laws that are passed, I believe in the last general session, that say that a specific law doesn't apply to home rule, but I've never heard of anything that takes away that constitutional power.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good time for us to point out the fact that of all the tens of thousands of discrete statutes under Colorado Revised Statute, only about 115 can actually override a home rule charter. The rest, they can't do it. They were not written to be of state concern. Now, Abe said it just a little bit ago. Home rule is not a panacea. We're not seceding from the state of Colorado. It's a tool, though. And just like home rule municipalities, and every municipality in Douglas County is a home rule municipality. It is a set of rights and privileges that entity has. A large plurality of the municipalities in the state of Colorado have chosen to go through the home rule process that's very similar to what we're doing right now, and adopt those rights and privileges that are afforded under the Colorado State Constitution. That's really what we're going for here, is additional rights and privileges for Douglas County under the state constitution.
All right, let's go to an online question submitted by D. How is this going to be independent from the BOCC if commissioners serve on the Charter Commission?
Yeah, I'll take that. It's a really good question. And just to add on, I might know a little bit about the previous question related to what the governor signed. Um, he originally had an executive order that basically was stating that there was going to be a withholding of some state grants from local communities if they failed to implement a slate of recent housing laws. And so there were 6 home rule cities in Colorado that were suing the state. That happened end of May. That may be what you're referencing related to those land use issues. But no, going back to the composition of the Charter Commission, it's 21 individuals. So if all 3 county commissioners were elected, that would mean that would still only be 3 out of 21, which is nowhere near a majority. I think one of the questions is, well, why would the county commissioners run at all for a charter commission studying county government? Well, I want to be candid about my response and just speak for myself, that county commissioners may know a thing or two about the county. I've spent 7 years as a county commissioner, 2 terms. And, you learn a thing or two sitting on 17 boards and being the, quasi-judicial executive and legislative branch of county government. So there may be some value in having folks on that board that know a thing or two about county government, but I don't want to advocate for myself or any others, but the question was why county commissioners, and that might be a reason why.
All right. Next is from James. What are the first 2 things that you want to change if home rule passes?
I think I sashayed into that just a little bit ago. I'd like us to fully re-implement the Taxpayer Bill of Rights in our county charter. Listen, right now, Abe, Kevin, and I, we try to do a good job to live up to the precepts of Tabor. We don't always have the opportunity to have a surplus, but when we do have a surplus, we try to return it to the taxpayer. Well, that's the 3 of us now. What about the next set of county commissioners after the 3 of us are gone? I'm not going to be a county commissioner beyond my 8th year. So I will be Joe Citizen, just like everybody else. I gotta want to have the protections of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights here in our county government as well. So for me, re-implementing Tabor in full here in the county is actually a real big priority for me. I'll let the rest of the panels offer up some of their ideas.
Yeah, and I would just add, I agree with the treasurer and Commissioner Teal. Part of something I would love to see is really significant and constrained spending limits so that, again, taxpayer dollars are not being wasted. But I want to be clear, the Board of County Commissioners has always budgeted to Tabor and frankly has returned a historic amount of tax dollars back to the citizens through a temporary mill levy reduction on an annual basis. So we are already doing that in budgeting to Tabor. I don't know. Again, this is part of the great discussion that could occur if a charter commission moved forward, but I wouldn't want to tether the county to Tabor per se or any sort of state law, but for the county to have a unique county structure that ties taxpayer dollars, even a surplus, to specific county functions that are priorities for this community, like public safety, like wildfire prevention, like reducing homelessness. And on that level, one thing I would love to see move forward into the charter is to codify HART into the charter. And by HART, I mean the Homeless Engagement Assistance Resource Team, which through the Homeless Initiative has functionally eliminated all homelessness in the county. That is something that the county is very proud of. When you come here, you don't see panhandling, encampments, or any unsheltered homeless. And there's a reason for that. a series of measures, including HART. So making sure that we have that dedicated co-response integrated into our charter long after commissioners are gone, I think that would be really significant, at least for me. But again, going back to the earlier question, I'd have to convince 20 other people that makes sense in the event I'm even elected.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to add that. Yeah, I would like to add something here. What's really interesting from the taxation side with respect to the charter is that the commission could get really surgical in their analysis with respect to tax caps, spending reductions. Tabor is a very specific set of rules and guidelines, and of course the commission could simply copy and paste it in, as Commissioner Teal said, and I would support that. But they could also evaluate it in a much more sophisticated manner, as Commissioner Layton was speaking, and bring in the values of Douglas County, whether it's open space, homeless initiatives, et cetera, to tailor that Tabor initiative to Douglas County's specific issues. And therein lies a fantastic opportunity, I think, with the Charter Commission to address both revenue and spending.
One of the things that Commissioner Teal and I have discussed isn't just wholesale of rebrucing, but also just going in and taking the individual parts of it and adding them back as they would apply to Douglas County. And to move to a different area, I'd point out that in the last legislative session, the legislature has attacked our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, and our family values. And these are things that we can put into a home rule charter, and as long as it is clear that it affects only the parts of Douglas County and doesn't go beyond our borders, I think we have an excellent chance. And I've discussed this with attorneys, and they seem to agree, and I'd certainly welcome Jeff's opinion.
All right, let's
Happy
go
to
to
weigh
the
in.
phones. And again, remind you that it's star 3 if you'd like to ask a question. Mike is next. Mike, go ahead.
Hi. I know you've mentioned a couple of topics that might be in the charter, but what are some other examples of topics that would be, covered or inserted in the charter?
I would love to tackle this because there's been a lot of conversation about what happened during the pandemic. And having been one of the commissioners that lived through the governance on that issue, monitoring the epidemiology dashboard on a daily basis, and seeing that Douglas County had extremely low hospitalizations, extremely low mortality, yet we were receiving state mandates to close businesses, for kids to mask, lots of mandates that didn't make really any sense for our community based upon our demographics, which is frankly why we had to go through the machinations of creating our own Douglas County Health Department. We have been successful in Douglas County, but it's because we've had to fight the state every step of the way on issues that really didn't reflect the needs of the 400,000 we represent. So a specific answer to that question is we could codify the authority of the county health department right into the charter. And we could say something like Douglas County shall not adhere to state mandates issued by any state agency or official regarding the public and environmental health of Douglas County residents. And again, that would really allow the local public health department to have an expanded set of powers to make sure that your businesses don't shut down because a cold is going around. And I don't want to minimize coronavirus, but we certainly did a pretty significant after action report with a national consultant, and Douglas County fared the best of any county in the state, including a look at the entire state when it came to overall management of the pandemic. And it's because we tried to balance the severity of COVID with the reality of COVID. So that's one specific example. I'm sure others have additional areas.
One of the areas when it comes to public safety is the fact that we can do codify in the charter minimum staffing requirements. We've dealt with a wave going across Colorado of local communities that are trying to defund their police. Well, we could write into the charter that we can fund the police. We can write in the fact that no, we have to have minimum staffing levels, not just based on our overall population of unincorporated Douglas County, but probably even minimum staffing for certain areas. And maybe not have it tied to population, maybe have it tied to incidents and incident response, which is how our local fire departments plan their own staffing and plan their own resource management. We could do something like that. That's something the sheriff and I have been talking about that we could definitely codify in the charter. Another one that I'm kind of borrowing from the charter of the town of Castle Rock is in the town of Castle Rock, you can't sell off any open space or parkland. The town council can't do it, the mayor can't do it without a vote of the people. We've got a lot of really precious open space here in Douglas County. Sandstone Ranch is a great example. It was meant to be a residential development. That's how it was originally zoned. And the development company, I guess they went belly up. It ended up being owned by a retirement fund in Dallas for their local police department. Well, it would be super simple for us to flip that script, sell off Sandstone right now, and raise funds for a new justice center, raise funds for a new office building for the commissioners. That's against the values of Abe, Kevin, and I. We're not going to do that. But how do we know that we're not going to get a set of county commissioners 10 years, 20 years into the future who won't think that's a really great fundraising idea to build something, build new offices for the commissioners? I think we should put in a section into the new charter where you just can't sell open space without first going to the people and asking that permission. So that's another idea that I have.
All right. For those of you that joined late, good evening. I'm Roger, your moderator. We're talking about home rule with Commissioners George Teal and Abe Layden and other county officials. If you'd like to ask a question on the phone, please press *3. You'll be directed to an operator who will take down some basic information. You can also submit your questions online. We have a ton of questions already lined up, and it's only 30 minutes in. I'm wondering, commissioners, if you all would indulge us and let's extend this another 30 minutes and plan on going to 7:30 so we can get to everyone's questions, if that would be okay with you.
That sounds okay by me, Roger.
All right, we'll plan on that. Just wanted to let our trainers and team know that that is the plan. We're also hearing a lot of questions about how you can, topics for consideration in the potential new home rule charter. You can go to the website, douglas.co.us, search home rule and enter your topics. Submit topics that you think ought to be considered for the new home rule charter. So there's a great opportunity for you to get some ideas in early before the commission is elected next week. Let's go back to a question from Gary on the phone. Gary, go ahead.
Hi, I'm just wondering how much is home rule going to cost us as a community, and how much is it going to cost the average taxpayer per year?
I think that's a great question. And, based upon our estimation, if some of these really significant tax saving measures are integrated in the charter, home rule would actually save this county millions.
Yeah, in many ways, that's the point of doing home rule.
Up, right?
Oh, I missed that last part.
But our taxes will go up to pay for this, right?
How are taxes going to go up? I'm not going to raise taxes under home rule. We've had a couple of discussions about the fact that, no, we're going to do our best to re-implement Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, to where taxes won't go up. The whole point would be is what taxes can we eliminate? One of the things that came up really early is to get rid of the bag fee in the grocery stores. I mean, it can just because it got called a fee doesn't mean it's not revenue. Well, if it's revenue for the government, in my opinion, that's a tax. And so we have the ability. I'm going to advocate that we get rid of the bag tax under our home rule charter because it's a tax, it's a fee that's levied here locally in the county, collected by the county, and meant to be used in the county and only the county. Well, that fits the powers under the tax under home rule, and so I say let's get rid of the bag fee. I never wanted it to begin with; it got forced on us by the state legislature. That's one of the first things I want to eliminate. That's going to save everybody money. So if there's a way that taxes are going to go up, somebody's got to tell me how those taxes are going to go up, because the point of home rule is no, we're going to have greater control to lower our taxes.
I'd like to add, we've talked a lot about how we might lower taxes. Part of the reason to do home rule is to protect the way that we practice in general now. Douglas County government we have low fees in this county across the board, all the jurisdiction. We have low barriers to entry to start a business. Licensing isn't required to function a business in Douglas County. And some of those things we're going to want to put in the charter so that they remain that way. So we can look backwards and say, well, how have we been operating, and make sure we get that philosophy and those approaches to taxation and spending locked in the home rule charter so that we practice that way in the future as well.
All right, let's go to some online questions now. The next one is from Jack. Won't challenges to state mandates result in more legal costs?
Commissioner, would you like me to?
Yeah, Jeff, you and I've talked about that a lot. I know that you've got a well thought out strategy on this, and you've got some very clear thoughts from the legal point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So Douglas County is not a small county. We do have a legal department. We have a staff of attorneys, and we get sued, unfortunately, for some of the things that occur in the county already. So if the state or some other organization wanted to sue based on a challenge that they might have to our to our charter, we would be able to do that, and we would not outsource it, as you may have heard from other counties, to outside attorneys that would raise that cost. And if you've seen us in the news in the last 2 years, we've had a few disputes with the state, and those were handled internally. Those were handled by my staff, so there would be no additional cost.
I'd like to add here, because my office has worked with Mr. Garcia on a couple of hot issues in the past couple of years. His team works very hard. They know how to pick the cases and understand the cases that they can carry forward and those that they cannot. So they're already doing this work. We were asked this question at a neighborhood town hall last night, and it occurred to me that his team is already working lawsuits like this. They've got the resources on staff to do it. They're just going to be continuing the effort they're already doing. What it would do, in my view, and listening to Jeff talk about this, is perhaps increase our chances when we get into the court on some of these cases. And Jeff, I hope that's true, especially in the property tax.
No, absolutely, Toby. I think you said that really well. I think there's a burden shift. So when we have to go challenge the state because they've passed a law that we believe is unconstitutional or unbeneficial or just some way hurts our residents, we have to go show that we have the right to sue the state. Whereas if the state or some other organization came and they wanted to sue us to force us to do something, they would have the same challenge. So they would have to show that they have the right to sue us and tell us that they have the right to tell us what to do when the county has done the additional work to become a home rule county. So standing would be much more beneficial under home rule.
Well, and that's a very important thing to understand about home rule. Right now, Douglas County is a statutory county. We operate directly under the state. When I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Colorado. When we pass home rule, we're all going to have to take new oaths of office, because part of what we're going to have to swear to do is protect and defend the county charter. And so it sets us up as a separate legal entity. Weld County is not awash in litigation. Pitkin County, ironically, they do have litigation, but they're suing the federal government for things that they want happening in the wilderness areas around them. It's a case where and how do they have standing to sue the federal government? Well, they're a home rule county, and it's a separate legal entity than the state of Colorado. Because right now, guys, we are an arm of the state of Colorado here in Douglas County. And by going home rule, we become a separate legal entity. And so are we going to be awash in litigation? I don't see how. The issue is that we will have our own legal standing if something does come up, if we are challenged by the state or if we are challenged by residents legally.
Yeah, I'll just share. I don't want to put my attorney hat on. I'll keep my commissioner hat on. But having lived through this for many years, it actually might be a reduction in lawsuits because we have had to sue the state on property taxes, on unions trying to take over our sheriff's office. If home rule is successful, the burden shifts to the state, and the state would have to sue us if they decide to do that. So again, that burden shift would be significant, and we wouldn't have to engage in litigation every time we want to protect our citizens.
All right, here's a question that came from Persis. We also have a similar question from John and Donna. He asked, what if the charter is voted down in November?
Ooh, Jeff should take that because, Jeff, that's defined by the Colorado Constitution. So if you could help us out with that one.
Absolutely. So if the Charter Commission gets put together on June 24th, and they put together a charter, and that goes forward to a second election, and let's say that election is in November, and it's voted down, that Charter Commission will have an opportunity over a briefer period of time to make remedies or changes to that charter, put it forward again for another election, and have the opportunity to have it voted on again. So it really is a second chance, but one where it's been guided by the voters saying, there may be some issues in this that make it so that we're not supportive of it.
I'm going to go to a follow-up question that came in from Kim that's kind of on this line of thinking. If you miss the November 2025 election because the Charter Commission has not completed the charter, are you going to spend another $500,000 on a special election, or can we just wait and cover everything by regular ballot? Or do we have to spend more to have an additional election?
Would you like me to, Commissioner?
That sounds like another good one for you, Jeff.
Happy to. So there is a deadline for them to complete their work. It's 240 days for the initial drafting, and then I believe it's 90 days thereafter if for the Board of County Commissioners to put that on the up for a second election. So depending on how late they are in the process, you could hit that next November election if they were running a significant period late. But we could get that into another general election or a special election. And there are funds set aside. This is something I actually just recently learned for special elections because they do occur, and it's not just for home rule. And there are periods of time and there are years where those funds aren't necessarily used. This year in 2025, those funds would be used, or a portion of them.
All right, here's another. I think I heard you touch on Douglas County Schools a minute ago, but this one is from AD. Tell us how this will affect Douglas County School District.
No effect. This is something that came up very early, and it was addressed to me by the president of our school board. And we went back and forth. We asked Jeff to take a look at it from a legal point of view, and it just won't affect anything. There won't be any effect on funding at all. And we don't understand how there could be substantial effect on curriculum, on any kind of school programming, on school administration. in the state of Colorado, those local school districts run by local school boards still have all of that authority, regardless of whether the county they are in is home rule or statutory.
Yeah, and
Right.
I'll add to that a little bit because this is significant to me and those of us who were governing during the STEM shooting. A top concern of mine is making sure that the kids in our community are safe and that we are doing everything we can to avoid a situation like STEM. Unfortunately, and of course, this is public information. Just within this last year, there was a young man that came into Ponderosa High School with what looked like a bomb. And it was a pretty serious situation that could have been much more catastrophic. And thanks to the good work of many, that crisis was averted. But we have often said that we do not ever want to see a situation in our county where anyone can just waltz into a school and wreak havoc. We have, of course, learned that you can't stop all evil, and it's impossible to limit all bad things from ever happening. But can you create really significant speed bumps along the way? Absolutely. Our board worked on mental health, making sure that we have the highest number of SRO school resource officers in the state, which we now have, and then also making sure we have entryway security. One thing I would really like to advocate for on the Charter Commission, if given the opportunity, is to make sure we have a uniform minimum standard for the entryways of every school. And that would be tied back to the county's statutory functioning around the health, safety, and welfare of those we represent. I wouldn't want to do that without a lot of input and dialogue with the Board of Education. But our kids are too precious to take risks. And that's something that I do absolutely think should be integrated into our charter.
All right, we're going to go to Susie on the phone next. I think she's going to ask a question that we also have 2 or 3 online questions asking the same questions. So, Susie, go ahead.
My question is there a charter already written?
Susie, I haven't seen it, and I've asked for it. And so, no, the charter is not already written. That will be done by the Charter Commission. Are there ideas floating around? I've already expressed a few of my ideas on what I'd like to see in the charter. Am I trying to gather those up and write those down? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I do hope to serve as a charter commissioner, and I do want to have those handy when we start. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no charter already written.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would add to that. It's a really good question. And I want to be very straight up and honest about that. We have a lot of ideas, and you've heard most of them tonight. I mean, these discussions about home rule have actually been going on not just this year, but for many years. Board of County Commissioners has looked at home rule every year that I've been on the board. And for many years, our county attorney at the time, who was not Jeff, would say 2 things. 1, it's too complex. And 2, it really depends on the composition of the Charter Commission. And if you have 21 people from San Francisco that decide that they really like how San Francisco is governed and Douglas County should be that way, well, you might end up with a charter that really doesn't reflect the desires of the people of Douglas County. But the contrapositive is true as well. You get 21 people that really do reflect the values of our community, and you might get pretty darn close to a great charter for our community that's preserved in perpetuity. So, yes, the conversation around home rule has been going on for years and years. Commissioner Teal ran on the idea of putting forward home rule. So that also speaks to the issue of, is this being rushed? I mean, again, it is an ongoing multi-year conversation. We're just finally kind of hearing from citizens and wanting to advance it forward. But you're hearing all the ideas we have, and we're certainly excited to talk about more of them.
Again, if you'd like to submit topics, go to douglas.co.us and search home rule. You'll be able to submit those in advance of the Charter Commission starting its work if it is passed. Let's go to Courtney on the phone next. Go ahead.
Hello. Thanks for taking my question. But I will say some aspects feel like this is more of a power grab. For example, you speak of codifying items in case a new set of elected commissioners want to do things differently. Kind of sounds like you want to devalue the voice of the future voter. And then I'm also worried about the possibility of restructuring our county positions that are currently elected to being appointed. Again, that feels like I'm actually losing my voice as a voter. Please respond.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I'll
jump
tackle
right
that
on
and
top of that
go
one.
ahead, George.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thanks, Abe. When we talk about codifying things, it's more to restrain the Board of County Commissioners. I mean, this is a process that many of the municipalities that have gone into home rule, they have taken the opportunity in their municipal charters to actually define the roles of members of the town council, define the roles of mayors that in many ways have limited them. I do hear people say that this is a power grab, but if it's a power grab, it's a power grab for the people. I mean, this can be a method, and I'm going into this eyes wide open, that can be used to actually restrict the current free powers that the Board of County Commissioners have right now. I mentioned earlier preventing the sale of our open space without a vote of the people. Right now, the only thing that's preventing Abe, Kevin, and I on the Board of County Commissioners from selling our public lands off is our values. And the fact that we don't want to do that. We value our open spaces. Future county commissioners may not share those values. And so this is in many ways a way to restrict the powers of the Board of County Commissioners and put those powers in the hands of the people. Right now, if the Board of County Commissioners, if we pass a statute or we do a resolution, the input that the people have once we're done with that meeting is zero. There is no recourse. We have passed it. It is under Colorado law. It is law. Under a home rule charter, we actually have to allow for the people to petition for change. And that includes reversing a statute or reversing a resolution passed by the Board of County Commissioners. It includes amending the charter at some point in time in the future, which right now, you really have to wait for another election. And you probably have to wait for 2 elections if you don't like what the Board of County Commissioners are doing right now. That's different than a home rule charter. The people can get together, and we're going to define how that's done. What are the thresholds for petitions to overturn a statute passed by the Board of County Commissioners? What are the threshold for petitions to amend the county charter? Those are the things that the Home Rule Charter Commission has to deal with, but they have to deal with it. We don't have an option under the Colorado State Constitution but to allow a charter that has a way to be amended and allows for petition by the people of Douglas County.
Yeah,
If I could
I
add-
think that's a really good question, and it's worth elaborating a bit. It really is a check on the power of county commissioners, and the 3 of us are able to do quite a bit. Like I said, creating a new judicial district, a new health department, creating a homeless, all of these issues that we've been able to tackle. Thankfully, they've been really positive. But kind of like, your gardens this summer that are doing so great right now, Douglas County is in a really pivotal moment where it is the wealthiest, healthiest, wisest county in the state by all metrics. And we kind of want to preserve that flower in perfect bloom as much as possible, and to the extent citizens want to keep Douglas County great. But now is a really special time for us to continue that emphasis on public safety, low taxation, and making sure that the Douglas County values remain Douglas County.
All right, let's go to Linda next on the phone. Linda, go ahead.
Hi there. I'm wondering if home law or home rule passes, how does that or will that affect the current gun law statutes or whatever it is that we're currently under now?
We will have more tools in the toolkit, quite frankly. I think, something something the sheriff and I have been talking about is dealing with red flag laws, with the emergency seizure laws. That is predicated under a different level of evidence being presented, and so it is not the same level of evidence that you need in order to actually go and arrest somebody. It's a lower level of evidence that actually is very similar to what it takes to report child abuse. And so it's based on a presumption, not an actual show of evidence that somebody is dangerous and that somebody intends to use firearms for violence. And it's something that the sheriff and I have talked about. It's something we could codify into the charter and make it to where that is the threshold for the sheriff to take action. Again, kind of like the prior question, it can be a check on the powers of the sheriff, a restriction, if you will. And that's one thing. And then, of course, it goes to a lot of the gun laws require the sheriff's department to be the enforcement agency. And so, it goes to defining the role of the sheriff and whether the sheriff can, under the charter, enforce some sort of gun control law. Another item that when it comes to gun rights that I'm kind of borrowing once again from the town of Castle Rock and what's in their town charter is the fact that in the town of Castle Rock, the town council or the mayor can't pass gun control in the town of Castle Rock just from the dais. It's only a vote of the people can implement that gun control measure. I'd like us to do the same thing. I don't think it's right for a group of people, even though they're elected officials, to be able to restrict the rights to keep and bear arms of the people in the population. And so, yeah, I'd like to see that implemented to kind of ensure our gun rights are respected.
Yeah, no doubt our Second Amendment rights are under attack in the state of Colorado. And we believe that those Second Amendment rights are sacred. It's a bulwark against tyranny and an authoritarian government. And your right to defend yourself and your family and your property and your home is absolutely intrinsic to your constitutional rights. So as we see the state attempt to erode those rights, we want to do everything we can and integrate that into the charter so that you're more protected. Now, does that mean that there won't be challenges? No, but the key thing to remember is that burden shift, right? So under home rule, we might integrate those strong pro-Second Amendment protections. That burden would shift to the state to somehow challenge the county versus the county having to challenge the state.
All right, here's an online question from Dave. He says, I keep hearing from opponents of home rule that it's not as powerful as we're being told. If that's the case, why are they so afraid of it?
Great question. I'm not sure I got a good answer.
Can I pitch in, Commissioner?
Please do, Jeff.
So home rule at the county level has only been used by two counties, Pitkin and Weld. And they did it in the 70s. And they the county. The county is in support of becoming home rule, and they want to do it to make the county great. And in doing that, they're going to be able to craft things and use the law in a way not government, but to do good things for the community. And it becomes a game of drafting. It becomes a way to encapsulate all the things that are important to the county and do it in such a way that can defend the county. This is not the same as home rule counties have done in the past. This is a unique opportunity for Douglas to do something very special that could benefit the rest of the state.
All right, let's go to the phone and hear from Evelyn. Go ahead with your question.
Someone earlier asked about cost of this for taxes, and you said there wouldn't be any cost. In theory, it should be less, which would be great. But I'm wondering, how can there not be additional costs if there are, what did you say, 15 to 20 people involved in this commission? Are they volunteers, or how are they funded? How are they paid?
Yeah, under the Colorado Constitution, these are unpaid positions. I mean, these are all volunteers. So it's 21 people, 3 at large, and then 18 from the 3 separate areas of the county. And yeah, ma'am, I might want to buy him pizza if the meeting's going long. That's really the only cost, is buying them pizza and sandwiches so they can work through what would normally be meal breaks. Because, it was said by our county attorney, there is going to be some work to draft this charter. It's not just going to be something that can get knocked out in a single afternoon. But the members of the Home Rule Charter, nope, they're not employees. They're not paid. They don't get county benefits. They are strictly volunteers.
Yeah, I like to add, I get this question every day, and it makes sense. It's a really good question. And what I think is so great about the commissioners, that they are volunteer and that they are temporary. So they will not be hanging around with positions that will go on. This will be over this year, and the commissioners will go about their business after the process is completed. And with respect to the cost, there's been a lot of talk about the cost of the election. Now, that's primarily in printing and mailing ballots, which is something that this county does all the time. All the various elected offices, we print and mail out to citizens frequently. The assessor does it once or twice a year. The treasurer does it. Every office does this type of work. So that's the cost of doing business. The cost of the commission will be almost nothing. And frankly, the result of the charter should be reduced costs for government. And so that the picture of cost should be one that's purely beneficial. And there's very little downside from a financial point.
Yeah, I would just add that this county has 0 debt. It has a balanced budget. We will not go into debt or raise taxes to manage this election. That's just who we are in Douglas County. So there will be no increase in taxes and no going into debt to pay for this.
All right, let's hear from Brenda next. Brenda, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my question, and thanks for hosting these calls. A week or so ago, the Denver Post reported that 2 developers are the primary donors to the campaign in support of home rule. And I'm wondering what those developers hope to gain. I haven't really heard, the only thing I heard that related to development tonight might be related to open space and preserving it, actually. So I just haven't heard anything about why developers would be interested in this at all. So if they're the primary donors to the campaign, what do they hope to gain?
I think it's important to point out that there are 4 issue committees registered with the Secretary of State right now in favor of home rule. I do not know all these people. I don't know who they are. I do know 3 of the donations that were made in support of home rule. All 3 of those that I know of are by residents of this county, and every single one of them live here. As far as a lot of the hay that's being made of why would developers get behind this, I don't know. I don't know that I could tell you that. But the 3 donations that I know of, I know those 3 people. They're all people who live here in Douglas County and have chosen to raise their families here in Douglas County.
Yeah, I can speak to that as well, because that's really significant to me. When I first ran for commissioner 8 years ago now, I took 0 donations. I self-funded and wanted to make sure that nobody donated to my campaign because I never wanted to be beholden to anyone. The reality, though, is that elections do cost money. That's an unfortunate aspect of our system. And, oftentimes you have to rely on those that really care about our community to contribute. As long as I've been commissioner, my commitment has always been you get a fair shake, just like everybody else does. And that's it. So, my view of Douglas County is nobody gets special treatment here ever. We have rule of law, we have a system and a process in place. But boy, we appreciate when people who care about this county step up and say, let's keep Douglas County, Douglas County.
All right, here's an online question that actually came in from Patricia, but also a couple other folks, similar questions. Are the county commissioners planning to extend their term limit?
Well, I'll
No.
take that one because I'm the term limited commissioner and I will categorically answer no. At no time have I heard or discussed or had any conversation around extending term limits, and I would not support that. I don't support increasing salaries. Somebody had a question about appointments. All of the same functions of the constitutionally elected officers would remain the same from my perspective and from those that I've spoken with. The one exception to that might be the surveyor. I don't think we need to have a county surveyor elected. That is a ministerial function that should probably be appointed. But all the other constitutionally elected officers from sheriff, assessor, treasurer, coroner, those would all remain elected. And I do not support extending term limits.
How about
Yeah, and I'll just throw on, I'm in my second and final term, and no, I don't support extending or eliminating term limits at all. I really feel like term limits are the third rail of Douglas County politics. If you want to touch it, if you want to extend them, you want to eliminate them, that's going to be dead on arrival. I want a home rule charter here in the county. So I'm not going to even, I'm going to work against anybody who wants to extend or eliminate term limits on the Home Rule Commission, because I think it's going to be a death knell for the charter in November. And I don't want that. I want the charter to pass.
Commissioner,
I want
we
to
have several questions about.
please, if I could add something. I have not heard any of the elected officials who have been about this or share opinion or running for commission talk about extending term limits or, and that includes myself.
I'd have to add to that. I've had conversations with many of us, and we are all agreed. 2 terms is enough. If we can't get it done in 2 terms, it's time for someone else to do it. We all support term limits. We all support remaining elected and not be appointed. And these are they're non-questions. There is just no support for making any of these changes.
How about we go down the line, because we've had several questions come through, same vein about increasing salaries for elected officials. Maybe you can say yes or no on that question.
No.
Well, I'll start by saying, yeah, I'll say no.
Ditto to the no.
All right.
No. I want to reiterate, the opposition will have to create a boogeyman in order to somehow frighten people, but our citizens are super smart and they can read through noise and they get it. If all of us wanted to make more, I would go back to private practice as an attorney. George would go back to being an IT executive. I mean, there are other ways to do far better financially than to do public service. So this is a volunteer commission, and the intent is to serve the public. So zero conversation about increasing salaries.
Here's an online question that came in from Veronica. She asked, how will we learn about the qualifications of the commission candidate?
Well, that's a good one. I'd tell you, first and foremost, go and attend meetings where the people who are running for the Charter Commission are speaking. Toby, he mentioned a little earlier in the broadcast, he was at one yesterday. I was at a meeting in West Creek, all the way in the southwest corner of the county. You really need to do that. There is a website. The only problem is it's an advocacy, and it is speaking in favor. It's called dclocalcontrol.com. If you go there, you will find bios for the candidates that have been endorsed by that organization. Otherwise, I don't know a place where you can go and find it. We're not hosting that at the county level. We don't want to get into a situation where we're listing bios and then we miss somebody and there's an accusation of bias made, or we would have to write or restrict what any one of these candidates would want to say for themselves. So we're not going to host it at the county level. But yeah, there's at least one place, dclocalcontrol.com, that you can find bios about people that are running.
All right. Let's go back to the phones now and hear from Callions first. Go ahead.
Representing Douglas County and making this place a better place to work, live, and play. I was wondering, will there be an opportunity to publish any type of matrix that might give an idea or a picture of what state policies this exercise might conflict with?
Yes,
So
absolutely. I mean, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Abe.
Oh, well, I would just say, I'm a bit of an academic, and just going back to my field of work, I love those matrices, and I think having really clear diagrammatics and graphics representing all of the issues that are of concern statewide, and then boiling that down to the discussions and conversations in the Charter Commission, I think is a great opportunity for us to communicate with the public. Currently at the county level, douglas.co.us search home rule already has a lot of those potential issues, but including a matrix might be something that we could advance if this commission moves forward.
Yeah, especially Abe, as the individual provisions in the charter get written by the Charter Commission, I really think that's a really great idea. That should be captured and listed as, how is this beneficial to the people of Douglas County, but then how can this address elements of state overreach that we've all seen in the last couple of years. So I think that's a great idea. I'm all in favor. I totally think we should do that as the charter is being written.
It is a great idea, and those are great comments, both commissioners. It's an interesting question that should also be addressed to the commission once it's elected and seated, because that commission will need to make up their own rules on how they're going to proceed. They'll have a minimum number of meetings that they have to have, and then they have to follow those up with public meetings. So we, the citizens, will have an opportunity to engage them and ask them how they're tracking and how they're documenting their progress and sharing it with us. So I think that they would be a great group to ask that question to as well when the time comes.
Okay, let's hear next from Evelyn. Go ahead.
Hi. I have a question about large land policies that I believe currently exist. And I may not be calling them by the right term, but, I live in Sedalia, and out in this area, there's a rule about large land, like one house on 5 acres or more, to keep it rural, to keep it like it is now. And what I've noticed recently is a real push, possibly by you guys or maybe a developer, but to have more high density everywhere out here. And all these exceptions, to put in a project and that allow them an exception. And I'm wondering, are you thinking home rule is going to help cut back on that type of nonsense, in my opinion, because you're changing the whole character of this area if you do that. And just because that works in Parker, it doesn't necessarily work out here. And so is the idea with home rule that it would help that type of situation because you're going to keep Douglas County like it is? Or is the idea that it could go either way? Like you said, a bunch of developers could get on that commission and decide to just develop whatever they wanted, like a huge apartment complex by the railroad in Sedalia. So I just wondered, what is the opinion or the stance on that? Is it the state that's pushing you to develop more, and that's why you want to do something like this?
This is Tammy from Burning Tree Ranch. First of all, welcome and great to hear from you again. I know you've been coming to our meetings for many, many years, and I always appreciate seeing you and hearing your input, although we may not always agree. I want to be clear that in our county, we've preserved over 51% as open space. Obviously, if you include the Pike National Forest, we are over 51% open space in Douglas County. So we really try to balance the needs of a growing community with preserving our rural character. And that is absolutely something that we could continue to talk about, specifically in this charter. So what I might say is, if successful and this charter commission moves forward after the 24th, that would be a perfect time for you to provide some input on how we could integrate some language into the charter to best preserve rural communities, because that is a very significant value, something that I hold dear. I've made that promise to the 3 historic rural communities in Douglas County from before I got elected. And we've tried to do our best to honor that. So areas like Levere, Sedalia, Franktown, and many others, including your neighborhood, are dear to us and need to be preserved. So I definitely get that, and thank you for asking your question.
Yeah, the good news with home rule is the enhanced powers of controlling local zoning. And, the last few years, we've been fighting against a lot of the policies out of Denver to do what are called transit oriented development. And so these high density, these apartment buildings out near areas that probably haven't had that in the past, that's been a big push from the state to take those local zoning powers away from, the local elected leaders. And the good news is under home rule, we do have enhanced powers in order to control our local zoning. And not only that, but because, again, under a home rule charter, the people have the right to petition their government. And so call a decision into question that we really don't have right now. If we were to pass a zoning change, the reality is the remedy is a legal one. There is no it's a legal judicial remedy. Somebody has to sue the county. There is no legislative remedy to say, hey, let's reverse that zoning. That's something that could be allowed under a home rule charter. How we do how we do land use planning could change. Pitkin County does their land use by what they call land use caucuses, so that every land use decision is inherently local. It's not done by the county commissioners. Weld County commissioners don't do land use. That's handled by a separate council called the Weld County Council. Home rule gives more options for how land use is handled. It's really going to be up to the discussion that occurs on the Charter Commission on what we all want that to look like. And then, of course, it goes to a vote of the people in November on what we want that charter to be. And do we adopt it, yes or no?
All right, we have 3 or 4 questions around this general theme. If 1A passes, why is the process timeline only allowing 60 days for the Charter Commission to write the charter? And if they agreed to extend, or if they decide they want to extend to the state allowed 240 days, could they do that?
Jeff, maybe that's another good one for you to handle, sir.
Yeah, and I'll have to apologize to the commissioners because I think I may have created some of these questions because in the last time that we had a town hall, the question was asked, can this be done before the next election? And there, it is possible. So it's 100% possible that this could get done before the next election to save the county the cost of a special election or to delay the process. But that being said, it's not up to myself or to the Board of County Commissioners. It is up to the Charter Commission on how long it takes for them to get their work done and how long it takes to get that to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. There are some statutory deadlines and there are some extensions that they can ask for in that. But it is ultimately up to that Charter Commission to make sure that they feel comfortable with the work that's being performed before they move that forward. And to a question we answered earlier, that could be moved forward to a later general election as well.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Let's go to Natalie next. Natalie, go ahead on the phone.
Okay, so I guess this kind of is the follow-up to what you just said. So if this passes on Tuesday, we may not see the final charter in the November election, right? It may still be a work in progress. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you?
Yeah, so
right?
that's exactly right. So the vote on the 24th is just whether or not you'd like to study this notion of a charter with an elected charter commission that works on a voluntary basis. But absolutely a work in progress with a lot more town halls, public engagement, public meetings. And then you wouldn't even have to vote on an actual charter until November. So lots of time for more engagement.
Here's a question that kind of interesting from Phil. Why are people who are opposed to home rule allowed to run for the commission?
Well, there's no restriction. I mean, it's very clear. Anyone who resides in the county can run. I guess I can't. Obviously, I am in favor of home rule. I am running for the charter commission. I've talked about some of my motivations, the ideas I would bring to the home rule charter. I guess I just don't understand why anybody would do it. It seems very hypocritical to me, but we don't have a way to keep them from doing it under Colorado law. If they reside in the county, they can run, and I guess we do know that there are some who are opposed to home rule that are yet still running for the home rule charter commission.
Yeah, as objectively as I can, I love that question because I know so many citizens in Douglas County are asking themselves the same thing. Why are the most vocal opponents to home rule running for the home rule commission? And I'll leave it to our very bright citizens to answer that question for themselves.
All right, let's hear from Evelyn next. Go ahead.
I think this will be my last one. Well, it's kind of a two-parter because the last one I asked about large land, I appreciated your answer that it's honest and some of it you don't really know because that commission of people will have to decide how things like that will be handled. But I guess I was hoping to hear more that the idea of home rule was to help stop the state from forcing Douglas County to have to do high density. But I think you somewhat said that. So maybe you can clarify further. But my question now is about the senior property tax exemption that existed for many, many years, decades, I believe. And a lot of people chose to stay here knowing that when they retired, they would no longer have to pay property taxes. And I'm not talking about the Tabor issue and all that, because I agree with you there. We should maybe try to fight that because it's just really hurt us out here. But the senior tax exemption has nothing to do with that. That was something at a county level. And it's not just you commissioners now, it's previous boards of commissioners who have slowly whittled away. I mean, the word exemption means it's exempt, none. And they've whittled it away down from 100% no tax down to now you get $100,000 off of your valuation and that's it. And that's terrible when you think someone could have lived here and contributed for 40 years to property taxes, looking forward to the day, and then to find out, oh, now it no longer exists. So I wonder, is that something that could be improved under home rule? But I doubt it, because you guys had all the power to change that all these years and instead made it worse. So I would like to hear an answer about how that happened and what is the plan with or without home rule. Thank you.
You guys mind if I hit this one first?
I
Thank
think
you for the
know more
question,
about it than the rest of us. I think
Thank you
know
for the
more
question,
about it than the rest of us, Toby.
I should. Let's hope so, right? Evelyn, it's a great question, and you're so right that the senior exemption should have been tied to market values like property taxation is. But the General Assembly in the state of Colorado have failed to act. The fact is that your county commissioners and your county government have no control over the parameters and the conditions of the senior exemption. It is a state law, and it's actually embedded in the Constitution by the vote of the people. So it is not a constitutional amendment that we can change in a home rule charter. However, there is a home rule entity, City and County in Denver, that through their home rule has expanded the senior exemption. And they have had a sub-program to help with low-income seniors who have not yet qualified due to the 10-year requirement. I bring this up because there is an opportunity in the home rule process to make adjustments to the senior exemption. However, there'd be a cost to that. And so the commission would have to discuss that at length. But the reason the senior exemption hasn't been expanded for you in other Douglas County seniors who we value so much is that the General Assembly hasn't acted on it. And they've had the opportunity, you spoke about opportunity, they've had the opportunity in the last 20 sessions over the past 20 years to increase that $100,000 adjustment. It has been a $100,000 adjustment since it was started in about 2001, and it's never changed. So obviously values have changed dramatically since that. It's been a generation, and we hope they'll address it in the future. But it's certainly something we should talk about in the commission. I hope you know that your county commissioners, this board and prior boards, have worked to reduce property taxes for many years. I think I think you all have made adjustment to the county mill levy maybe 9 out of the past 10 years. And before that, maybe some more. I don't know. But looking at the past 10 years, it's been almost every year. So they continue to do that. They did that last year. They did it the year before. And those are definitely issues we should talk about in home rule.
Yeah, and I would love to add on that because our assessor is so bright and knows so much about property taxes. But I often get asked the question, from my colleagues traveling around the state, like, how is Douglas County so prosperous? And I will share the secret because I think it's something that every county should be aware of. We invest in public safety. We don't defund the police. We fund the police. We believe in keeping a safe community. Ensuring that we have zero homelessness. But how that works is when the perception of a community is that it's safe, the demand for the opportunity to live in our community goes up, which means your property values go up. So unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of appreciation that results in an increase in property taxes. As a board, we want you to capture the value of that increase. But then at the same time, we offer that temporary mill levy reduction every year to try to reduce the amount that we're taking as county government. So that's how we're doing it. And again, having a home rule charter and really studying this issue with experts like Toby would allow us to integrate these really important property tax saving measures into a charter in perpetuity so that generations of Douglas County residents could really see that savings.
Yeah, and Evelyn, I do agree. I do think we should do that, just like what Toby pointed out. I've already got it written down.
All right, one more question on the phone. Juan, you're next. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. My question is the following. Since Colorado is doing everything in its power to protect dangerous illegal aliens, if we pass home rule, what can we do? What can we do to let our law enforcement work alongside ICE, for example, to get those dangerous individuals removed from both our county and the country?
Yeah, I would love to take this one because it's really significant to all of us, and I'm sure we all have some opinions on it. I'm the first Latino elected commissioner in Douglas County history and have studied immigration since I was an undergraduate in college. My thesis was the economic impact of Mexican immigration on the politics of Southern California. And, the result of that and the studies that we've seen from many peers is that illegal immigration impacts legal immigrants the most. So we're a county that supports the American dream of people going through the proper process, the proper documentation, and becoming productive members of society. The challenge is when people come here illegally, especially to places like Denver, 40,000 Venezuelan migrants coming to Denver when they didn't have the resources and, frankly, the climate to support that many individuals. This is a cold weather climate, beckoning people with a welcome sign saying they're a sanctuary city without any resources is not compassionate. So we've said that from the beginning. But specific to your question, so a significant portion of the state's anti-ICE regulation relates to county contracts. So home rule could actually give counties an enhanced right to contract. And so in addition, a charter is not necessarily a contract. The county could codify policies in the charter of supporting and sharing information with ICE that would not be regulated by current state laws. So again, that increased immigration enforcement could be codified within our home rule charter.
All right. Well, that brings us really to the end of our expanded Q&A session on home rule. Commissioner Lady, do you have some final closing remarks you'd like to make?
Well, I've been talking a lot, so I would like to defer to my colleagues. I'll just say that Douglas County is the greatest county in the state for a reason. It's healthy, wealthy, and wise. And, no doubt, there are a lot of folks from Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, and beyond that want to move to Douglas County and make, Douglas County maybe more like those cities. The 400,000 citizens that I represent are interested in more local control, and home rule absolutely allows that increase in local control and would preserve Douglas County as it is. So certainly welcome the opportunity to answer more questions and want to thank all of the citizens for your active engagement.
All right.
I would like to add that the reason that we're here is that we love this county and we want to keep it the way it is. We're not looking for massive changes. We're looking to maintain the quality of life here. We had one person who was demanding to know, why do we want to make changes? If you like this community so much, it's because we like it that we want to defend it. And that's why we're here.
Thank you. Dave, Toby, do you have a final comment?
Hey, look, it's an honor to be your county assessor. It's an honor to be part of this process. I think this is a great opportunity for Douglas County, the government, for the citizens, for the businesses. I would encourage everyone to stay involved as this goes to the next step. Should Douglas County citizens approve this in the June 24th election, then we have part B of this process and a lot of work to do. So stay involved and, more to come. There's a lot of work to be done still.
And Commissioner Teal, would you like to take us home?
Yeah, thanks so much, Roger. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And thanks for the great questions. Thanks for the great comments. I hope this was very helpful to kind of fill you in on a lot of the nuts and bolts, the facts about home rule, as well as those of you who asked some of our ideas. I hope you found those ideas helpful in coming to a decision. Folks, the power is in your hands in this election. And if you say yes, and we can work on this home rule commission and work on this home rule charter, the power will still be with you. The choice will still be yours, possibly in November or later if the Home Rule Charter Commission takes more time and needs that more time in order to get a good Home Rule Charter for the people of Douglas County. Thank you all for joining us. Very much appreciate it. Go ahead, make sure you vote. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, vote. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. On behalf of Douglas County, thank you for joining us tonight in this extended Q&A session. If you didn't get your question answered tonight, we invite you to submit feedback or questions at douglas.co.us/town hall. We hope you will join us again for a future town hall, and we wish you a very good night.